Hello, this is Colleen with Designs of Value Art, and today I'm going to start my step-by-step guide for watercolor for beginners. And we're going to start out with supplies. That's why my table looks like such a mess. I have a ton of supplies here that I want to go over with you. I'm going to show you some of the brushes that I have that I think would be a good choice for you. You can certainly try any brush of your choice if somebody you know has recommended one. This is one that I would recommend that you definitely get. It's an eradicator brush. It's a brush that we use to remove mistakes, clean up edges, all of those things. And boy, when you're first starting out, this is one of the best tools you can have, is this eradicator brush. This one happens to be a Billy Shoal. I've also gotten some from Rosemary Co. It's a huge brush outlet out of the UK that's very well known for good brushes, and they're really a nice price. And then talking about price, you can go from expensive to mid-value to the least expensive. Let's start with the most expensive. This one is a number 6. And that just tells you the size of the bristles. But you see that really nice point on there? I'll put it over the white here so you can see it. Beautiful point on that. It's an Escoda, made for acrylics, made for watercolors, number 6. So that's the most expensive. And then for a mid-value is again a Billy Shoal. You can get hers right on Rosemary Co. as well. See the nice tip? It's a nice long tip on there. You could actually paint an entire design. This one happens to be a number 6 as well. But look at the difference between the two sizes. So be aware that even though it says it's a number 6, they're both a number 6. This one is definitely much larger, holds more water, although this has a nice belly to it. This will be the first time I've used this brush, so that'll be fun. But this is probably my favorite brush right here, is the Billy Shoal brushes, because it lends itself to being able to do detail work. If you wanted to with a number 6, you could paint an entire design with a number 6. And then this is one that you can pick up. Actually, I was looking for them at Hobby Lobby the other day and I did not see them. So you might have to go to a company. For example, I deal with Dick Blick. There's Jerry's Artorama, many different art supply houses out there that would carry this. This is a Princeton watercolor. Now, if you're going to buy the Princeton, I would recommend the long, because that's going to give you the long bristles and the nice point. And that's what I'm always looking for when I'm looking for a brush. So that's the least expensive out of those 3. And then this is another one that I would recommend that you have. It doesn't have to be this specific brush. I'll grab another one that you can see. But this one's a Billy Shoal, and it's called a mixer. And you mix your paint on your palette with this. And the reason that this is such a good idea to have is it saves the wear and tear on your good brushes. You're using this brush that's made to be durable to mix your paints. Now, if you don't want to buy a Billy Shoal, you can, this one's a Royal number 12 flat, they're called, and it does the same thing. So you can mix your brushes with that. Just put these back. Well, you know what? I'm going to show you. You need a holder to keep your brushes upright. So you can just take your brushes and put them upright like this. To let them dry, I do a different thing, because when your brushes dry, the majority of your brushes have a wooden handle. This is your handle, this is the ferrule, and these are the bristles. So you want your brushes to lay like this when they dry. Reason being is if you put them in your holder, it's going to dry, but that water is going to drip down into the ferrule and it could crack your handle. So our brushes cost a lot of money, so you want to start to protect them. This is just a little item I picked right up. I think it was on eBay. Could have been Amazon. I checked both. And I check prices. I check eBay, I check Amazon, I check Dick Blick, and whoever's got the best price is the one I go with. I have a Hobby Lobby close to me, finally. It's about 9 miles away, but it hasn't been there forever, so I've had to learn how to order online, and that's why I always double check prices. Now, another thing that you might want to get, this is just a plastic one, and I know I got this at Hobby Lobby. It helps you mix your paints. It works really well. It just washes right off. It's plastic, so that works really well. I do wear a glove when I paint. This is just a 2-finger glove. I wear it on the hand that I'm holding my brush with. It goes on like this, and these you can get eBay, Amazon, many different places, Dick Blick. And what it does is your hands always, even though you might have just washed them, have oil in them. So the more you put your hand on your watercolor paper, the more that spot that gets the oil from your hand is not going to accept paint. So if you're ever doing a painting and there's one spot that just won't accept the paint, it's probably because you got your hand in there. All right, and then you always want to have paper towels. I have this size. Sometimes I fold them in half and cut them to that size. It's whatever is most convenient for you. And then I have these little paint chips that are just old cut up designs that I didn't finish or didn't like or whatever. And I cut them into little, this was actually arches, I can tell, rectangle like this. And then when I have my resource material and I want to match this exact orange, I put it on here and I hold it up to the resource material. Oh geez, I probably need a little more yellow. It's a huge help in deciding if your colors are looking well. This is something I recommend. You can get them in different sizes. I have a small one too that's easy to carry around, so when I go to classes I have a small one to show to the students. But this is an invaluable tool. It gives you all the information about the colors. For example, what the complementary color is to blue violet is yellow orange, blue is orange. All of that is going to be in there. It's also going to tell you that this is an analogous color scheme. 2 to 5 colors side by side on the color wheel would be an analogous color scheme. It tells you if you choose yellow orange as your main color, what's the split complementary? It would be violet and blue. So that's another way to choose a color scheme. And then on the other side, it gives you, let's say we're doing, I got some smudges on here of oil, it looks like. Let's say that we're painting something in violet, okay? Now, if I'm adding red, this is the color it should be. If I'm adding red, that's the color it becomes. If I add yellow, that's the color it becomes. If I add blue, that's the color you create. So it really gives you some nice ideas on looking at a color and saying, oh geez, I really want to make that dark, but I don't want it dull. Well, then you can add black, you can add the blue, that would darken it. Adding water to watercolors, because there is no white, so you use water to lighten it. So this is an invaluable tool. I would recommend you have one of these immediately before you start to paint even. And then this is a tool that I absolutely love. It's a painter's color diary. And I think this is Jerry's Artorama. Doesn't say. It's called a painter's color diary for watercolor. I think I got it from Jerry's Artorama. I got a couple of them. And it helps you keep track of the colors that you've used. Here's the one I was looking for. And I'll show you what it looks like when I have it all filled out. So I was doing a gladiola, and I chose my yellows. And I wrote down here what the yellows were. Like this is lemon yellow and sentinel yellow. So that's what that box is. This one is the light value, and it's the sentinel yellow So it's this one plus this one is what I'm trying to say there. And then the medium value plus the deep burnt sienna. Okay, so that's what that is. And it just breaks down, and I always put down it was my Gladiola mixes yellow and orange for a class that I was showing you how to create a gladiola. And then what I used on the leaves, if this was the accent, all of that. And I put it right in my folder. I create folders of every design that I do. And I put that right in my folder along with the outline, line of design that I used. And it makes so much sense, because if I want to go back, oh geez, I painted a really lovely apple last year. Wonder what those colors were. I can go to my file and pull out that apple design and pull this out and go, oh yes, this is the color scheme I want to use, or these are the color values that I want to use to create my new apple. So that's an important item. Let's go on. Set this aside. Not enough space around here, of course. And we'll talk about palettes. This is a dirty palette, but it is what it is. So this is a ceramic palette. This is what I recommend as a new beginning watercolor artist, to get a ceramic palette. Reason being is, if you buy the plastic palettes, yeah, they're nice and big and lightweight and all of those things they're pluses. However, see how I can tell what that color is when water was added to that color? If you put that same thing, water and that color, onto a plastic palette, it is going to bubble up, and you're not going to be able to see what that color truly is. Where with a ceramic, as you can see, it really doesn't bubble up. I was in and out of this quite a few times, it looks like. So that's important to keep in mind as well. And then another valuable item is transfer paper and tracing paper. So let's say you picked out the perfect resource material. You went to one of the websites like Pixabay or Pixels, or even your own photographs. iStock might be one you have to pay for, but the first two I mentioned, Pixabay and Pixels, are free. So you want to make sure, you know, that you're using a free one if at all possible, especially to begin with. And you do a tracing of that resource material. And that's what this is tracing paper. This one I picked, it's a Master's Touch, so I know I got it at Hobby Lobby. And you can always wait till they have it on sale, and you can get it for 40% or 50% off. So I never pay full price, because they're always going to have a sale. If not that week, it's the next week. But you put this over your resource material, and then you outline it or put as much detail as you want to. As a beginner, I would recommend putting in as much detail as you can. Then you take your tracing, you put it on top of your watercolor paper, and you slide and tape it down. I always recommend frog tape so that it doesn't stick to your watercolor paper. And that's what this is. It's called frog tape. I have the container right here. And it's easy release, basically. So it doesn't have a lot of glue on it. Painters use it to paint walls with, and I really like this product. I think I got it right at Fleet Farm. Or I might have gotten it at Menards. We go to both, so, and I know they both carry it. It's a little more expensive, but well worth it. It's huge. It lasts a long time. So once you've got your tracing taped down to where you want it on your watercolor paper, you slide this underneath your transfer paper, and it's light side up, dark side down. You see, I've used this many times, and you can use them as much as you want. Try not to fold them if all possible, because you can actually leave a mark on your watercolor paper that's very difficult to get away, to erase away. So don't fold them if at all possible. I folded that one. So that's another item. This is to create how to pick your center of interest. It's just one way that you can do it. I do have some things on YouTube about choosing your center of interest, and this is just a clear plastic sheet that you put your items in, and then I went right over the top and I marked it off by thirds this way, thirds this way, And then you would pick your center of interest with the most items here or the most items here. Whatever center of interest in those four corners is going to be the prettiest, and it's going to have the most detail, the most different textures and different colors and that type of thing. So that helps you pick that out. And then you also want to try a masking fluid. Now this is Grumbacher. I think I picked this up right at, it was probably Michael's or Hobby Lobby. And this one I ordered on Dick Blick. It's a Daniel Smith artist masking fluid. What these do, and I like this one because it's got a bunch of different tips that come with it. And I do still life, so I really like a tiny little dot on this item or a long line on this item. And with this one, you can really get that. They both work fine. I also use drawing gum. Keep them all right here on my desk. It does the same thing. It is a masking fluid so that you maintain the whiteness of your paper, because there is no white in watercolors. It's just very light. All right, so that's another item. Then the paints that I use, I have sitting here. I use Sennler watercolor paints. They're a little more expensive. However, they're very smooth as you apply them to your watercolor paper. Daniel Smith, like this masking fluid that I showed you, they have a whole line of watercolor paints, Winsor and Newton. You don't want to buy a student grade, because if you buy a student grade watercolor, like Cotman's is a Winsor and Newton student grade, there's many of them out there, so you've got to really take a look at the item and what it is. If it says it's student grade, go away from it, because it has such a small amount of pigment. It's not going to be as bright and vibrant and lovely as these colors are, and it may not last. It may fade. So there's a lot of different reasons you want to stay away. In the beginning, you want to be able to sit down and paint an apple, whether it be a yellow apple, a green apple, a red apple, an orange apple, whatever, and you want it to look like that's what you're painting. With a student grade watercolor product, you may not get exactly what you're looking for in your colors and your values. So keep that in mind when you're picking out your paints. Now, I always buy these little jars. They're by Art Bin. Probably a little more expensive because Art Bin is a little bit more expensive with their products, but I really like the fact that they have a twist top to them. This is my watercolor, my water that I use when I'm glazing my watercolors. And in this, I add the blending and glazing medium to my clean, clear water. And I always use this strictly for glazing. I don't clean my brush in it. I don't do anything like that. This is just strictly for glazing. I also use a different color brush, so I know that's my glazing brush. I use one brush for water and I set it aside, and I don't use it for any painting, if I remember. But adding the blending and glazing medium, what it does is it gives it an open time. In other words, it's not going to dry as quickly as if you put down just regular water. So if you're doing a large area, like this would be a large area in the watercolor world, because you have to glaze all of that. And sometimes if you start up here, and I do recommend you start in the left-hand side and come down if you're right-handed, and the reverse if you're left-handed, keeps your hand out of it. Sometimes you'll get the colors just the way you want them up here, and by the time you get down here, it's dry. So with the blending and glazing medium added to your glazing water, you have more time to add your color and play with that. So it works out really, really nice. I loosen that jar, so I'm going to retighten it. There we go. And then I also use the jars. I don't think this one's an art bin. It might be, but I don't believe it is. But it has mixed paints. Like I love a very nice green, almost what I would call, in looking at it, a hunter's green for leaves. And I usually use it as my dark value, and I go from there, and on my palette would mix, you know, 3 values for that green leaf. So that's always good to have around, and you're not mixing all the colors. You need to do that each and every time you're painting. Now, one of the most important things, of course, is your watercolor paper. There's many different kinds. If you're going to be a serious watercolor artist, and why waste your time if you're not, you want to get 100% pure cotton. If you don't, like this company, Master's Touch, makes a watercolor paper that is not 100% cotton. It doesn't, your watercolors do not react the same to that inexpensive watercolor paper as it does to this. I even recommend using less expensive paper. I'm just gonna, this is less expensive, but I still do major designs on it as well. This is Blix, but it's 100% cotton. And so if I'm going to do like a study and I want to do a rose petal, I'm going to put a rose petal, a rose petal, a rose petal, but I'm going to use 100% cotton because I want to know how it's going to react to my paper, mostly arches, but I do like this one as well, and it's less expensive. So I always want to give you a couple different options of watercolor paper, and they all come in different sizes, so you can choose the size that you want. Important, always take a look at your watercolor paper and make sure it says 100% cotton. That's very, very important, how your watercolor paint is going to react to your paper. Once I got that through my head, I realized what a major difference it made and how much easier it was for me to get my paint to do what I wanted it to do. So keep that in mind. Now I've got a water bucket here that I'm going to show you, and it's full of water, so I apologize. I'm going to be very careful. It's probably dirty, yeah. And I love this because it has a place that I can, and I'm going to move this over so you can see it on camera. I can put my brush on there and let it dry on its side. But I was forever bumping into that and mocking it on the floor or whatever. So that's when I got this to hold my brushes while they dried. But this has got 3 wells. Now the first 2 actually have marks on the bottom or little raised lines on the bottom that you can clean your brush really well. Okay, and this one is good. You could just keep clear water in there. So I clean my brush in this one and I rinse it in this one, and then I go ahead and do what I need to do on my painting. This one I keep just as an emergency if I need really, really clean water in the back. But I like this, it's by Magello. Less than $20. I think you can get them right on Dick Blick, on eBay, Amazon, any of those places carry this. But it's very easy to clean. I just bought a little scrubber that goes right in there and scrubs it all up. Doesn't look like it, but I use it so often. All right, so that's an important item to have. You always want to have water, a place to clean your brushes, and clean water that you can access quickly right next to you. I keep it actually on another table to my right, away from my paper, because I don't want to spill on there. I was reading an article by one of the well-renowned artists that I really enjoy, a gentleman, and he says, well, I did something today that I recommend all my students not to do, and that is to eat or drink at your art table. And he was drinking a cup of tea and knocked it onto his design. Oh my gosh, I would have had a heart attack. But he said it really, really, and I had to chuckle when I read it, creates a lovely antique finish to the watercolor. But you don't want to take that chance. You don't want to spill anything onto your watercolor paper when you're painting. So I keep that all the water and everything away from where I am painting, because it's just important not to do any spillage or anything. But the other thing that I use is, I showed you the paper towels, but I did not show you. I use, and I bought these right at Walmart, $10. I think I got a dozen. Baby diapers, cloth baby diapers. And I like these because they are so absorbent. I can take my brush, and I've got way too much water in it, and I can go like that very quickly, and it removes a lot of water off of that brush. So I love these. I keep one on my lap. I keep one to the right of me. I've got a couple around all the time. Plus they wash up really well. I just haven't washed these ones in a while in your washer. So that's a good trick. The other thing is, I've had too many eye surgeries. And this is invaluable. You want to have a magnifying glass so you can see what your detail is doing. And you can take your, if I can find one here, there it is, liner brush. And I can see exactly where I'm going with my liner brush. So it's real important to be able to see your items as well. So that's what we have today. I know, of course, erasers to kneaded. This is not a kneaded eraser, but it's a stretchy eraser. And this is a product that will actually, it's called a cement something or another, cement square, that removes your masking fluid when it's time. But this is just a nice eraser that once I've got my tracing onto my watercolor paper, and I don't want it to be real dark like on here, I just took my resource, I created a tracing of it, I put it on my watercolor paper, and it comes out fairly dark. So you want to be light as you put it down, but you can just take this and roll it right over your watercolor paper and bring it up. As far as the watercolor paper, you're going to have 3 different styles to choose from. You can pick cold press, which is kind of the middle of the road. It does have some bumps and grooves in it. You can buy hot press, which is really smooth, takes a little bit of practice to deal with, or rough. Now, rough is not something I would recommend to, say, a botanical design or a still life, because you really need to put some detail in those styles of paintings. And with rough, it's very difficult to get detail in there because it is very rough texture. I like the cold press, and it's everybody's preference, but I started painting in oils, and we would paint on masonite boards. It would be a board this size, just a 1/4 inch thick or whatever, and we would take our rolling sponge, and we would roll our acrylic paint for our background all over it. We do it about 3-4 times, but by doing that sponge, it left you a little texture for the oil to grab onto, and I like that. I like that texture. I got used to painting on that surface, so that's why I like the cold press. But everybody's going to be a little bit different that way. If you like a hot press, go for it. If you're not going to be putting a lot of little tiny detail like a landscape or something like that, then a rough would be okay. I personally do a lot of botanicals and still lifes, and I like a lot of detail. So the rough for me is not an option. I bought one by mistake once, and I painted a floral on it, and I thought, what is going on with this? I can't get any detail into these leaves. So it was very difficult, but I learned my lesson. I don't buy rough paper any longer when I'm going to do a floral. So there you go. I hope that helped as a beginning watercolor artist, and I gave you some good tips and techniques to get yourself started. Please let me know in the comments. Check me out at Patreon. I'm at patreon.com/Colleen D. Aiken, A-K-I-N, and you'll see all my classes, beginners to advanced. And I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have, please give me a thumbs up and write me a comment. Thank you so much. Have a great day.